Today I have Cameron Gotts. He's an executive ADHD coach, an ADHD coach and mentor, coach mentor and trainer, and he's the host of the Translating ADHD podcast, which he's a co-host there. And I recommend to the listeners to listen to Translating ADHD podcast because I've learned quite a bit of stuff from his podcast as well. Thank you, Cameron, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Andre.
Um, the main reason I asked you here, Cameron, was to talk about your ADHD hierarchy of needs. I saw this at a cadre conference a few weeks ago, and a fellow guest on my podcast, Christina Crow, a psychotherapist, brought this up in her presentation, and I looked into it, and it it resonated with me, and I thought this was an important thing to bring to the listeners. It brings a lot of clarity on. I thought was if I would have known about this at the onset of my diagnosis 5 years ago, it would have probably sped up my acceptance and my plan to management and acceptance and overall growth.
Right.
So, just what is Cam Gott's hierarchy of ADHD needs? Let's start there.
Sure. So, and I really appreciate that Christine brought it up and shared it with other professionals, right? To illustrate the need to look at something like needs. Because I think before we look at my hierarchy of ADHD needs, we need to look at needs in the first place. Like, what is a need?
Okay, let's define that then. What is a need in your opinion?
Yeah. So a need is really something that it makes functioning sustainable. Right. So when we think about needs, it's like they're general needs of, and this is why I was inspired by Maslow's, is because it's been out there for a long time, the sense of these physiological needs, these security and safety needs, a sense of connection and belonging, and so on and so forth. And so needs are operating in the background, and when you don't address needs, they tend to come back and address you in a way that is not necessarily helpful. And so when you don't address needs, you create a stressor. And so this is something we want to be paying attention to. And I really appreciate what you said there, Andre, about like, I wish I had this. And I will say that part of my training, I've been training coaches for 16 years. And I have to give a nod to Denslow Brown, who is my co-trainer at Coach Approach Training. And because she came up with this values and needs assessment. So values and needs assessments are out there. But just to sort of distinguish what's a value, what's a need, and to look at them and what your needs are. So there are these general needs, but there's more specific needs. Like, think about an introvert. An introvert would have a need to kind of withdraw and to re-energize without a lot of people, whereas an extrovert has that need to be out and more social. So this need for connection, it's really dependent on your own personal needs.
Right.
And so that's the thing that I'm interested in, is we have this dance between stimulation and stress. We tend to use stress to get things done. And so we will often kind of focus on the big shiny object or the big signal. And here's the thing is, needs don't usually operate in the foreground. They operate in the background. And when we do focus on them, we tend to focus on them at the top of that Maslow's hierarchy, right? Self-actualization and esteem and connection and opportunity, but not really thinking about the needs at the base, which are more about brain management, brain awareness, and safety and security, and taking care of those daily stressors.
Okay, so we're more likely to pay attention to our needs at the higher end of the hierarchy than paying attention to the ones at the lower end at times.
Right.
Is that what I heard?
Yes.
That's interesting, because I think now put that in perspective is, yeah, it's like, duh. Yeah, I see that now.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah. And again, people, when they come to work with me, so I work with entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners, and they come to me, and what do they come with? They come with their dilemma. I'm struggling with getting done what I need to get done. I'm struggling with taking my business to the next level.
Right.
So they're focused on a pain point. They're often not focused, Andre, on a need. They're not looking at needs, right? But a good coach is going to help someone address what are the needs that are not getting met. This is doubly important for leaders, that leaders will often be focused on performance and again, those higher levels of,
Right.
right? But they're not focused on necessarily the needs of their people. And when they don't address the needs, then what do you have? You have people disengaging, right? Losing interest, losing investment, losing values like or important elements like trust and respect, right? So these basic elements that make a good business move can be put in jeopardy if you don't address needs. So the hierarchy, it's really, by the way, it's just, it doesn't mean that you have to start at the bottom and work your way up. It's really
Okay.
more of a prompt, Andre.
Okay.
It's a prompt to pay attention to. There's more than just the self-actualization, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They're focused on the opportunity, the big signal, the playing in a bigger game.
Yeah.
Right. At that esteem and self-actualization level. And it's like realizing, hey, wait a sec. What about my own personal needs? Am I getting the sleep that I need? Right. Because this is about bandwidth. This is about taking care of your brain so you can get up and perform at that level you want to or need to.
So basically, if I'm right now at the level, I think I'm at the esteem level, I should also be ensuring that my belongingness and the safety and the physiological is also to support me at that level.
Yeah, and again, I think so. I mean, it's a Maslow's. People have been poking holes in Maslow's for 60 years or thereabouts, right? I mean, it came out in the 60s, I believe. So it's been around a long time, and that people have argued that you know what, your needs don't line up neatly like this as a hierarchy.
Right.
Right. So again, people are out there arguing with us right now. They're listening and arguing, saying, no, 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 no. It's Maslow's been tested and poked and challenged. And I'm right there with you, listeners. It has been that people will seek out connection more than they'll seek out the ones below, like safety, security, or shelter. Right. But if you're sort of at that esteem level in the sense of creative action and meaningful completion, it's pretty hard to do that without addressing these other areas, like that you're taking care of your bills. You're taking care of these daily functioning needs, like paying the electricity bill, paying the water bill, paying your credit card. And people with ADHD get in trouble because they forget, they don't set up a system to address those daily stressors. And then guess what? Safety and security becomes more of a stressor, but they aren't paying attention to that. It's like, the world's against me. Why is it so hard to be successful every day? I just want to focus on my awesome project.
Yeah, I think we could all relate to that.
Yeah. And it's like, the problem is William Dodson said it. We have this interest-based nervous system.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Self-care, like getting up and going for a run, or brushing our teeth and flossing and hydrating, that doesn't really jazz us. It's not that exciting. But if we can get kind of interested in that of, I want to do that in order to cobble together effective brain functioning.
Yeah.
Right. In that lowest level of physiological needs is That's your prefrontal cortex, people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not taking care of your prefrontal cortex and your brain, your cognitive bandwidth, if you're not addressing that and feeding it, right, fueling it up with nutrition and resting it with sleep and downtime, right? There are a lot of guys who are just go, 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 and they don't understand why they don't have any juice.
Yep.
It's because they're not addressing a need to rest and renew and refuel.
So the other thing so I guess a little bit further to my point is, if I want to stay, again, just to use the same level we're talking about, the esteem side, to stay at that level longer, the other levels below that have to be a little more fortified, or at least be aware of that need, that if I'm not holding my esteem to a certain level that I want, then I got to look down and see, is my belongingness and love there? Is my safety there? And a lot of times I think our physiological ADHD needs, which is your base level, is having that awareness of how our brain works. And that's where you're referring to as the sleep, the exercise. That stuff doesn't drive us. That doesn't interest us at all. But if I'm starting to think about it, that for me to be more self-actualized and keep my esteem, I have to take an interest, or maybe it will become more interesting to me because the outcome will help me on the higher end of the hierarchy.
Right. And you sort of, if you start to, I love the word that you used there. Your word was fortified.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I can fortify these, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to go enroll in an Ironman triathlon, right, to address these lower needs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to have, locked in and have the perfect, say, social structure, right?
Yep.
But if we are just paying attention to it,
that.
right, paying attention and to integrate it in and see how it all weaves together. We are wired for context. So what does that mean? Is that, again, our frame of reference matters. And we really shoot ourselves in the foot when we just focus on the big signal.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think about, how do you achieve and then sustain that achievement? When you talk about esteem comes through action, and action comes through executive functioning. You got to be able to move from that inertia place of rest into action, and then rinse and repeat and go again. And in that stage, you have to have self-compassion. Well, we tend to have an inner critic. We can beat ourselves up pretty good.
Just one?
Right. So esteem is like, because we can, like, again, this achievement of like, I go, come on, man, get in gear, go, 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 come on, drill sergeant. It's like that drill sergeant. Is that drill sergeant really helping with your esteem? Right. And so meaningful achievement, creative action, and to support that, and to, we can do it in hyperfocus. We can hyperfocus and do it for a short sprint.
Right.
The hare and the tortoise story, right? Yep. Of the run between the hare and the tortoise. I love to tell the story of the only problem that the hare had. The only issue the hare had was they didn't set an alarm for their nap. Right? They go off the side and they nap, and then they forget they missed the race because they didn't think about the other side. So it's okay to be the hare as long as you get that rest, but then wake up again and re-engage. But that takes, again, this sort of organic, holistic, seeing more of the picture. And that's what I mean by wired for context. You are shooting yourself in the foot if you're not acknowledging needs. And it's like, you can be dismissive and say, you know what, it doesn't interest me. And so I can see over there, Andre, you're like, okay, we can turn our attention to stuff and we can start to cultivate interest. This whole idea that interest is this thing that I'm interested or not interested. And it's this sort of binary response. Well, no, I'm not really interested in that. And then we dismiss it.
Yeah.
So if you become curious about, and again, make it your own, you don't have to be this, fit person that's getting 8.5 hours of sleep and consistently every night. But if you fortify and you get creative with what that means for you, own it. So in our in our podcast, we have the Translating ADHD podcast, we have this expression: understand, own, and translate, right? So to understand the dilemma or the opportunity, to own it. If you're not doing great at needs, to own that. And then the translate is like translating it into opportunity. This is where the entrepreneurial spirit comes in, is how can I take this dilemma and turn it into a learning opportunity and experience, or again, to kind of just acknowledge needs are at play. And if I don't address needs, they're going to bite me in the butt.
Okay. So what I like there is, I really like that understand, own, and translate. And the needs not being met. And as a leader in your company, I can relate to that right now. You just gave me a whole different aspect of the next conversation having with a few of my staff is I gotta understand their needs now. I don't think I've ever paid attention to that lately, just because of everything that's going on. So I think by going out, I appreciate this insight, because people would get disengaged, their needs aren't met, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, there's so I teach a class for Melissa Orloff, and so she runs ADHDmarriage.com.
Yes,
right.
yeah.
She is the ADHD marriage go-to expert. And so people come to my class after they've done her couples seminar. So these are the ADHD partners who come in and they're like, help me with my ADHD so I can be a better partner for my spouse. And I know you went to the leadership thing, but I'll pull that in. Okay. But they're coming in and they're thinking about, okay, I got to get my ADHD under control. And they're at that esteem level in the sense of production and activity and, wanting to do that. They're not addressing their own needs, A, and B, they're on sort of eggshells with their spouse right now. And if they can just sort of put down the defensive and come to the table, both parties, and start to talk about needs. So what is a need that is not getting addressed? And so in that situation, often it's a safety and security need, right? The spouse doesn't feel secure because they can't count on their partner. But this, as you said, that empathy to slow down, and again, a term we use on the podcast is pause, disrupt, and pivot. To pause the internal dialogue, to pivot toward your partner or your employee, and to be curious, right? Curiosity is one of our greatest attributes. To take that curiosity and be curious about that other person and what might be a need for them and what might be a need that's not getting addressed. And instead of trying to decipher it ourselves, because we love to problem solve, is to be quiet and ask the question. So what are your needs here? And what's a need that we could address here? And invite them to articulate their need. Now, I'm just going to say, Andre, real quick, if someone says, Andre, I'd really love 7 weeks of vacation during our high time. Right? That's a no-go there. But if you get a sense of, a quick stand-up so we can just touch in and, ask me how I'm doing or what kind of support I need, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think even just with the marriage or a significant other, I don't think there's a lot of discussions about each other's needs. There's primarily our own needs, especially when they're not being met. We almost kind of get reclusive, and then it becomes an inner critic, an inner rumination type of scenario, and where that goes.
Right. And when there's added stress in the room, and when there's stress in the room and you're trying to mitigate stress, it's sort of like you've got you're trying to keep your head above water. And it's like, again, you're just doing this sort of mad dog paddle to kind of keep things afloat. You're looking at the biggest negative signals to address. Right. The pain point. But underlying the pain point and the frustration and the dilemma is often a need that's not getting met.
Yes.
And so with that, it's like needs, expectations, boundaries.
What I love about this is these needs are everywhere. It's not just in one certain scenario, situation, relations. It's everywhere. And I think this is where it's profound.
Yeah. And you know what? The other thing that happens in leadership, Andre, there's so much focus on values, right? Like Ray Dalio talks about his principles. And that it's again, principles, values, like again, respect or integrity. And you could sort of argue, well, is it a need or a value, right? So values are these things that are aspirational, but you can't achieve a value. You can't really actualize a value if you're not honoring and fortifying fortifying the needs of the organization, of the individuals, right? So it's this age-old thing that people want to have a sense of belonging. They want to have a sense of autonomy. They want to have a sense of growth. Can I come into this organization and is there a pathway to growth? Right? These are fundamental desires.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's a human need. And when you don't address it, then they're going to check out, whether they have ADHD or not.
Oh, agreed. Completely agree. This is not ADHD only. Just your hierarchy speaks more to the ADHD brain than others. But this conversation about need here is definitely everything and everyone, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And so my interpretation is really takes in ADHD, brings in the ADHD aspect of, again, the brain awareness leads to better brain management. And again, zapping daily stressors, like identifying those stressors, so we're not constantly spending all of our time reacting to the biggest fire. And again, entrepreneurs love to react to fires. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so it's this, again, that dance or that balance between stimulation and being stimulated, but also stress. And so we use stressors in order to activate and again, to get those things done in the 11th hour. It's exciting. It's thrilling. But when we're down there and in this reactive mode, we can't get to that higher level of self-actualization where you're able to be something, creative expression and being a part of something bigger than yourself and to create a real movement.
Right. So what happened at the beginning of this episode is when you started talking about needs, I went on that path. And the one thing I forgot to introduce at the beginning, Cam, was what is your hierarchy? I think the listeners are kind of going, we're jumping around on the different levels. I just wonder if you can quickly run through your hierarchy to give them a little bit of a context to it. I will have the image available in the show notes for download so you can see it also. But if you can just give a quick rundown of the hierarchy.
Sure. So, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to actually start at the top because that's where most of your listeners are focused and why they're not there. So I'll start there actually, and then we'll just backfill dropping down.
I think based on our conversation, I think that's exactly what is part of the point. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And so the tippy top. So Maslow provides these 5 levels, and there may have been some added, but I just took the old basic Maslow's that is out there in the literature, and I just modified it, and I'll provide a link to my to the page on my website that gives more context of why we want to pay attention to certain things with ADHD. So the top one, and I love, by the way, Andre, I love it that we're doing this now. So we are card carrying members. Yeah, for sure.
But we caught it.
Yeah, you caught it. You caught it. I did, not me. So self-actualization is this, again, it's that being a part of something bigger than yourself. It's fulfillment. It's this sense of having a positive impact. And I think this is what we're built for. we are built for creative expression. But so often we are down these lower levels, just putting out fires all day. In fact, and so we're in this reactive mode. It's so hard for us to get into that Eisenhower matrix, quadrant 2, right? Which is important, not urgent. This creative expression where you can, and again, there's another really interesting thing out there about, sorry, there's my one. We might have to break this one. We have to cut this one out, but I got it. There's some recent studies around like flourishing with ADHD. And there's one study, it's very limited, but around sort of transcendence. And being a part of something bigger. So this is like Gladwell's 10,000 hours. It's like, appreciation of beauty and excellence. Well, how do you get there? How you get there is through the level below, which is putting in your 10,000 hours, right? That's that esteem. How do you get esteem? You get esteem through accomplishment. Well, accomplishment is intensive executive functioning. It's about setting your plan for the day and taking action on the thing that you want to take action on, which again is a challenging thing for those of us with ADHD. So that's the next level below self-actualization, is putting in your hours. Putting in your to get to that esteem. We can't just like make ourselves feel good. Esteem comes from doing, being, making things happen. This is taking your goods to market. And that's where I started as a coach, was helping people, as a follow-through coach, because that's a big impact for ADD. As you said, Earl, also it's that self-compassion, that you hear the drill sergeant, you think you need to have the drill sergeant. I'm going to say, okay, there's the drill sergeant, but make space for some benevolent supporter, right? A compassionate leader. That can sort of help you be on your advisory board, if you will. I'm going to put that in air quotes.
That makes sense.
So there's esteem. And then below that is belongingness and love. And so this is about positive connections, support and acceptance of who you are. So I emphasize positive connections because often people with ADHD have a history, or they might be in a current situation where it's not positive. Can be toxic, where people are dismissive of your neurochemistry. They're dismissive of your ADHD. Oh, come on, just try harder.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know what? And again, there was a book. There's some of my colleagues from years ago, Kate Kelly and Peggy Raimondo, wrote a book. You mean I'm not lazy, stupid, or crazy?
Yep. Great book.
Yep. And so along with that connection, to get that connection, but also not to overextend. We can overextend ourselves in that connection. There's a people pleaser trait amongst individuals with ADD. And so we will address other people's needs to the detriment of our own.
Ours. Yep. Guilty.
So boundary management, right? I used to always sort of like, how can I help you? Because it took the spotlight off me and my own dilemmas that I couldn't understand how to fix because I didn't know about my ADHD.
Right. Yeah.
So boundaries and there. Below that is then the safety. Okay. Safety ADHD needs. And that's again, identification and relief from daily stressors. That if you are constantly in a scramble all day, you're never catching a break in order to ascend to the next level. So you're wondering why I can't get to esteem and self-actualization. If your day is full of fighting fires and react, then it's looking to addressing that safety. Now, the thing though is that don't beat yourself up for like, oh, well, that's all I do. Well, that's ADHD, is that it's difficult for us to build proactive and positive structures in order to take care of those things. But getting creative there of how can you have others help you address those daily stressors,
Right.
so that they are not constantly nipping at your heels.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally below that is the physiological needs. And so in Maslow's, it's about food and shelter and basic needs. The most basic for us, it's really about doing all that we need to do, whether it's treatment, whether it's medication or not medication, but this mindfulness, sleep. It's again, your bandwidth, your brain. It's you lead with your brain, right? You do not lead with anything else. You need your brain, and your ability to make decisions starts with brain management. And that starts with brain awareness and aware of your brain's needs.
And it's exactly what I've always been telling people. The more we're aware, we can apply the knowledge that we know. And I like this.
Yeah. And the final thing I'll say is that something that doesn't get a lot of airtime in ADHD land is the need for helpful tethers, right? This is a helpful model or tether that orients us to the dilemma and the opportunity.
Right.
So listeners, you can look at this and you can look at the pyramid, and I don't care what you do with it. You can take it and make it into a mind map. You can make it into some, amoeba. It doesn't matter as long as you're paying attention to these and then riff on it. Go ahead and think about your own needs that are not on this model, because it's just a starting place.
And like you said before, it's a prompt.
Exactly. It's a prompt. That's all.
I love that. I love it. And it does not say you have to go step 1, step 2, step 3. We can be anywhere on this hierarchy when we're aware of it in different situations, different parts of life. But I like how you said it was a prompt. And I really like what you said at the beginning, that a need makes functioning sustainable. And if that's not addressed, then it becomes a stressor.
Exactly.
Like that to me, that was profound.
Well, and again, I'm borrowing a lot from what I've learned in my 20 years in this business. Okay. The Jennifer Koretsky is a coach. And she I remember her saying that good ADHD management is good stress management.
Yes.
And that it was like, damn, that is so good. Right. That there are stressors, and we will often, again, but we crave stress. We crave stress because what does it do? It activates
our brain to be in,
right,
but too
function.
Too much burns us out, creates emotional dysregulation, fatigue. Then it gets right down to their physiological ADHD needs not being met.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I'll say about this is, again, it's like, how do I do this? I would just, again, give yourself a giant break. Number one, you're getting through your days. As you're getting through your days, we have all developed our coping mechanisms to get through our days. We have to get through our days. So it's not to just we don't want to throw out our coping mechanisms, right?
No.
But if we start to think creatively about these lower needs, and can we make it fun? Can we make it engaging? Can we do it in a way? Gamification is another way, like getting together. And if you go run with a partner, you hit the physiological and the belongingness one, right? You get a 2 for 1.
Yeah. And I love this. And I want to end this episode here with one thing that you said, and values are aspirational, and they can't be actualized. The value can't be actualized without fortifying your needs. And I want the listeners to take this away. I want to ask you, how are your values tied to your needs? And if they're not really your needs, then are they truly your value? Oh, that just hit me right now. I want people to think about this and to let me know what you think, and email me at andre@andreb.ca. It'd be great to hear this, because I want to ponder this one out more. And honestly, Cameron, I did not realize it would go down this route. But this was a profound discussion about needs. And it was all because of your hierarchy. And I appreciate you taking the time to provide this other perspective for the listeners here, because I know they're going to canoodle this for a while and it's definitely going to make an impact on them. So thank you.
You're welcome. And is it okay if I just share a little bit about that value need connection?
Go for it.
Yeah. So for a long time, I didn't know my value. For a very long time. But while I was in that space of unsure of my value, I was addressing needs. And it wasn't until I really addressed my needs and kind of got in my practice as a teacher, as an educator, as a trainer and coach, and got that esteem going, did I really realize my value. And my value is really, I'm a damn good trainer. I train coaches. And, you know, then it ties to the bigger agenda and what we're trying to do, right? My whole goal is to elevate ADHD coach training, to make it better. So that's that self-actualization piece that is tethered to values around excellence and integrity, right? But it again, it all kind of fits together in a really interesting way. And it is. It's very fluid and it's going to be different for different people.
And there, my friends, we'll end there. Thank you, Cameron. There's no way I could have finished on top of that better. So I think that's a great thing for everyone to think about. And again, thank you for your time. And I'll put the link in the show notes for the podcast and his website, and to the link to the pyramid for the hierarchy. Thank you, Cameron. I hope we can get you back again.
Andre, it's been a real pleasure. So thank you so much.
All right. Take care.